watching the Bulldog Brewhouse Podcast.
Steve Grover back for another episode of the Bulldog Brewhouse Podcast. Hopefully everyone's doing well. So I've got a special guest tonight again. We always have special guests. That's, the whole thing of the podcast. We like to have guests in here that have a different perspective of life. And, here at Grover Law Firm, we take our job very seriously. And we've got Mr. Bob Grundie here. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Steve.
Good. So thanks for being on the podcast. I know, we've gone into this winter season now, and the change in weather and the traffic and the weather coming down. I think we dropped about 25 centimeters of snow in the last 2 days, but you made it down here safely.
Yeah, I was. If it wasn't you, I wouldn't be down here, I guess.
Where would you be, at home watching hockey?
Well, I don't typically leave my hood anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't like driving at night. But anyways, the road conditions were good, and
okay.
It was only about a 25-minute drive down here tonight.
Okay.
So it's great.
Well, thanks for coming by. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you originally from?
I'm from Montreal.
Montreal. Parlez-vous français?
Un peu.
Oui. Comme ci, comme ça?
Peut-être.
Peut-être, a little bit. Okay. And then you came out to Calgary?
Yeah, I've been out here now. It'll be 41 years this November that I.
So you've been out in Calgary longer than I've been alive. I'm just joking.
Yeah, well, you're a young guy still. I'm an old geezer.
Okay. So what made the big move from Montreal to Calgary?
Well, I left Montreal for the first time probably in my early 20s. For some reason, a buddy of mine decided we were going to go logging on North Vancouver Island. A friend of mine down the street had done that, and I thought it sounded pretty interesting. And through him, I got a name or a contact of a company that would probably hire a bunch of green kids from big city to go logging on North Vancouver Island. So we were both working for an engineering firm at the time, and we quit and we jumped in his old Studebaker, I think, Rambler, old American Rambler.
Yeah. And
we drove up to Port McNeill, and we stayed there for about 9 months logging, and that was quite the experience. And then was back to Montreal for a while, a couple of years, and worked. And then I decided to go back out west again. I figured to Alberta. A couple of guys that I shared a ski shack with, they had gone out and worked on the rigs during the summer months, so to pay for their schooling. And I had dropped out of college a couple of years previous. I was taking a communications course, and I guess I was smart enough to realize that wasn't going to get me a job anywhere.
No.
And so I came out west, and not knowing what I was going to do, and ended up in Edmonton. I walked into the office of our engineering firm up there, and I said, "Do you have any work for me?" And they said, "Do you want to go to Fort McMurray and work on the Syncrude project?"
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea where Fort McMurray was.
Well, I've been born and raised in Alberta, never been to Fort Mac. So tell me a little bit of Fort Mac.
Well, Fort Mac was pretty interesting. It was.
So what year are we talking about Fort Mac?
This was 77, May of 77, and so I thought this would be an ideal situation. I would get to live in camp.
Yeah.
Everything was paid for, save my money, and I figured I'll spend a year out there, then go back to school. And so I jumped in my old rusted out '68 Ford Galaxie 500 and headed up Highway 63 for I guess it's about 4.5 hours north of Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
And back at that time, I think parts of the highway weren't even paved, and certainly nothing north of Fort McMurray up to Mildred Lake where the Syncrude site was. It was all gravel road, so you're... Anyways, I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had a job there, and I'd have a place to sleep, and they'd feed me, and it'd be a good place to make some money and save my money. And instead of staying for just the summer of the next year, I stayed for 2.5 years, and then went back to school. Went back to Ottawa and went to school.
Okay, all right. And then back in '77, did they have a McDonald's in Fort Mac?
I don't know if they had a McDonald's back in '77. They got one, I think, a few years later, but they had an A&W.
Did they have a Tim Hortons or no?
No,
Tim Hortons.
That McMurray was still in its infancy back then. It was the boom time. Syncrude was being constructed. Suncor, which was called GCOS, Great Canadian Oil Sands back then, they were the first plant, but they were on a much smaller scale than they are now.
Okay.
But Syncrude was in the construction phase, and the engineering firm that I worked for, they had the contract to build the plant.
Okay. So you go back east, you go to Ottawa.
Yeah.
You get your education there.
Yeah.
Where did you go in Ottawa?
I ended up going to Algonquin College and took a technology program in industrial fire protection.
Yeah.
When I ended up in McMurray, an old friend of my dad's and mom's was working for Syncrude.
Uh-huh.
He had been an emergency coordinator for Petrofina and the refineries in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And he moved out in about '77. I think he was upset with the election of the Parti Québécois in Quebec at the time and where the province was heading. So he had a chance to go and work for Syncrude. So anyways, it was his job that kind of fascinated me and working in the industrial fire protection field. And when I found about this course in Ottawa,
Uh-huh.
and I said, you know what, I think that's what I'm going to do. Anyways, I didn't get in the first year I applied because I used an Alberta address.
Oh,
And I
okay.
guess priority is given to an Ontario residence.
Okay.
So the next year I applied and I used my brother's address in Etobicoke
Okay.
and got in. And so went back there. It was a 2-year program. And during the summer months, I'd go back and I'd work for the Syncrude Fire Department. And then after my second summer up at Syncrude, and after I graduated, I thought I was going to go back and work for them full time.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to get all our firefighters trained down at the Texas Fire School at Texas A&M. This was the biggest fire school probably in the world and noted for its industrial fire protection training.
Okay.
And so I heard they had a recruit training program where you go down for 3 months and you get certified as a firefighter in Texas.
Yeah.
And so I applied and along with a buddy of mine who also graduated with me, he was from Sudbury, and so we went to Texas, and we became the second and third Canadians ever to go through the fire school
Okay.
and graduate.
Okay.
And then I came back to Montreal and basically informed Syncrude that I was ready. If you got a job for me, I'll be up there right away. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, they had a hiring freeze on.
Okay.
And so I hung out in Quebec at a ski town for the whole winter with some friends, and then collected pogie and really did nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the fall, as I knew the pogie was going to run out, I said, well, I better start looking for work. So I thought if I was going to maybe head out to Calgary and if I wanted to apply for the fire department, I had to get I think it was a Class 5 license or a Class 1 license to drive trucks. Anyways,
That's Class 1. Class 5 is just for any car.
That's right.
Even a moron like me has a Class 5.
Yeah. So anyways, Keanu College in Fort McMurray had a program,
Uh-huh.
and I applied to that and I got in. So I went up there for about 5 weeks and I got my Class 1, and then headed down. And I had a buddy who had moved to Calgary the year before, and so I headed down to Calgary and I guess to start looking for work.
And then you've been here ever since.
I've been here ever since, and
Never looked back to Montreal. Never wanted to go back and work and be under René Lévesque's regime, part of the Québécois.
No, you know what? I was back there in for a 40-year ski shack reunion in June,
Yeah.
and I hadn't been in my old ski town since '94, I think, and no, I couldn't live back there. Really nothing to do, not so much with politics, but
So
It's a big
why wouldn't you go back to Quebec? We're gonna get into how you got to know Grover Law Firm and Steve Grover, but why would you go back to Quebec? Just out of interest, because I've been in Alberta my whole life.
One in Montreal is a big city. People,
you don't like big cities?
No, people think Calgary's a big city.
Yeah.
Calgary's a town.
What about like Moshe's? Isn't that the steakhouse there? Alibaba, the Lebanese food. They've got like a lot of good food there. I've been to Montreal.
Oh, Montreal's got some great food and great culture. You're probably maybe thinking of Schwartz's Steakhouse.
Yeah, Schwartz's. Yeah,
smoked meat.
Yeah,
which is
the smoked
famous.
meat place. Yeah,
that's not enough reason to live in a city. It's
no.
And you know what? Over the years, my entire family left the province, and
So
a lot of it
was
was
there?
a lot of it was they were getting transferred to Toronto as headquarters started moving away from Montreal and relocating to Ontario.
Yeah.
You know, I think about of the 20 people I shared a ski shack with up in a town called Saint-Cyr-des-Monts. I think only 3 are still living in Quebec. Everybody is all across the country. People in Vancouver Island, down in Texas, Colorado, Alberta, Ontario. Everybody just left.
So why wouldn't you recommend someone moving to Quebec?
Well, unless you're fluently bilingual, don't go.
Even in Montreal?
Even in Montreal, you won't get work.
You can't. Can you get a job there?
I don't know what the economy's like. The few friends that I still have left there. I think they're all retired now. I mean, they all spoke French. I mean, it was not a big thing. It's if you're gonna work in Quebec, you have to be bilingual. It's as simple as that, and it's. No, I'm not crazy about Quebec politics.
No.
But I couldn't go back. The city's too big. The same as I couldn't live in Greater Toronto.
No, you wouldn't live in the center of the universe called TO?
No, I spent about 3 days there with family last June.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get out of there and get home.
So Calgary's a good size for you?
Calgary's a good size. You know, I joke to people, I don't really live in Calgary. I live in a nice little town called Silver Springs, Alberta.
Yeah, well, it's still part of Calgary.
And everything I need is up in Silver Springs. Yeah. It's a great. We were voted the best community in Calgary this past year. So. Okay.
So let's go back a couple years. Unfortunately, you were a client of Grover Law Firm. So tell us a little bit about your accident.
Well, the accident was it was April 2012. I think. About mid-March, I had just shelled out quite a bit of money for a brand new mountain bike. I used to do a lot of backcountry mountain biking. While I was working in Calgary for the federal government, I also had a provincial fire inspection agency. And I had been contracting out my inspection services to the Banff Fire Department. I ended up doing that for 16 years and for 10 years to the Olds Fire Department. So I was quite busy, and so I was spending a lot of time up in Banff, and always had my bike, and I had bought a brand new bike. I was getting pretty thrilled for this. The winter was over, spring was coming, and I'd bought a brand new a bike rack, a hitch-mounted bike rack for my pickup truck, and I had there's a place down in Bowness called the Hitch Shop. And I took the truck down there to drop it off to get the hitch installed. Okay. And the guy said it'd be about an hour and a half. And I said, that's great. I dropped it off at noon hour. I said, you know what, I'll leave you the truck and I'm just going to go and get a bite to eat. And that's when life changed. I was crossing the street to go to the restaurant, and I was in a crosswalk. And I got run down by an individual on their cell phone.
Okay.
And I mean that changed everything in my life dramatically. I mean, everything was altered. Yeah. And nothing was the same after that.
Yeah. Okay.
Never got to ride the bike.
Yeah.
Couldn't even get on a bike and actually ride one for 9 years as a result of the head injury I sustained.
Was it just like vertigo issues, loss of balance, stuff like that?
You know what? It's very difficult to describe. most of us ride our bikes since we were little kids, and you just hop on a bike and you take it for granted. And I know you're a motorcyclist, and we never think about it. We just get on and go.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of things going on in your mind in terms of balance and how we maintain our balance. And I guess a neurologist could give you a good explanation of all the factors involved.
Mm-hmm.
When your brain gets injured, things aren't working like they normally did. And getting on a bike, just trying to stay upright, was tough. The one or two times I tried to do a short ride, I was actually found myself almost on a 45-degree angle on the bike.
Yeah.
And that's how I was riding it. But it was just sensory overload. Everything that was going around me. You go to cross the street, you're looking at traffic, there's people, there's noises, you're trying to stay upright on the bike. Horrific experience. And so I never really got back on the bike until just 2 years ago.
Okay.
So, needless to say, I never got to use the bike rack. I kept the bike for a year. I kept looking at it in my basement because it was a beautiful, very expensive bike. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that I'm probably perhaps never going to ride again. So I sold it and took time off from work. On 2 or 3 different occasions, my symptoms kept coming back. Mm-hmm. I'd feel better. I'd go back to work. The symptoms would come back. We'd go through the same routine. Mm-hmm. I think it was in September of 2012, which would have been about 5 months or so, I guess, after the accident. I was up in Banff working for the fire department. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was sitting in the office I shared with the deputy chief and writing up reports, and I was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was going to go down Banff Avenue to Starbucks to get another cup of coffee. And I noticed I had trouble walking down Banff Avenue. I was weaving. I was finding it extremely difficult to walk in a straight line. And things kind of got worse by the time I got to the Starbucks and got my coffee. And I remember when I had the coffee in hand and I was outside the door in Banff Avenue, I was wondering how I was going to get back to the fire hall. Mm-hmm. And in the 200 block there's a crosswalk from one side of Banff Avenue to the other side. And so I got the lights flashing and I started walking across, and I was literally weaving from one side of the crosswalk to the other. And I thought, I'm in uniform, I'm the fire inspector. I said, this is kind of embarrassing. Yeah. And I got back to the fire hall, I put my coffee down, I went to grab something. I had a legal briefcase on the floor. I was going to grab a fire coat or a building coat or something, and I bent over to grab it, and the next thing I know, I had crashed into the deputy chief's desk. I just lost my balance and just crashed on the floor. Mm-hmm. And kind of picked myself up. I sat in the chair and I said, it's over, everything. I won't be working again. I can't go through this. I've got to be off long enough to recover. So, mm-hmm. And that basically was the last day I worked for either the federal government, mm-hmm. And I knew that I was going to have to shut down my contracted work with the Olds Fire Department in Banff.
Okay, so obviously you're in this accident, you're struck down as a pedestrian in a crosswalk, you suffered a concussion. A lot of people talk about brain injury as sort of like the silent injury, because, you come here today by podcast, and I appreciate you being here. And, you look normal to me, but you've obviously got post-concussion syndrome. So, you retain counsel, you retain our office, and obviously, you've got ongoing symptoms from your brain injury, correct?
Yes.
And so tell people what it's like to have like an ongoing injury from, your brain injury.
Your life changes dramatically. It's initially after the concussion, when the symptoms got worse, even simple things as going grocery shopping.
Uh-huh.
The the type of fluorescent lighting they used in the stores would have an effect on me.
Okay.
Sometimes the big grocery store chains like Safeway or Co-op, they'll have sales on, and they have these little yellow or white signs sticking out perpendicularly in the aisles as you go down. Well, each one of those signs would register with me almost like individually, and I was bombarded with the sensory overload. And there were times when I contemplated leaving my shopping cart and in the store and just going out. And once I got back into my truck and I sat down, everything stabilized. So it was incidents like that. Walking, I found was difficult. I initially started walking with 2 walking sticks to help maintain my balance. Because I found myself weaving down the sidewalks and constantly stepping off the curb. Those are the reasons I got the dog, is because walking was through my treatment with the physiatrist at the brain injury clinic in Calgary. I said walking is probably the best therapy you can do. Amongst a host of other therapies. I had, I think, vision therapy for 8 months and all kinds of other neuro physiotherapy at the South Health Campus Center, and I had some experimental treatment through the brain injury clinic and the Cummings School of Medicine at Calgary.
Okay.
I did that on 2 sessions of that. But the reason I got the dog is I thought, well, I'm not going back to work in the immediate future, or perhaps never, and I need to walk. I said, probably should get a dog to go walking with, and people would be less likely perhaps to phone the police saying there's this drunk walking down my street every day weaving from side to side. And that's what I look like. And
that's unfortunate.
But I remember walking the dog at nights during the fall, and when all the yellow poplar leaves would come down on the sidewalk under a street lamp, and there'd be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and again was sensory overload. It was like being on drugs. It was like every single leaf would register separately with me, and Dr. Diebert at the brain injury clinic said that what I had was it was the injury to the cerebellum, which I think is responsible for vision, perception, and balance. And she, I forget the name of the term she said, but the signals from my brain to my eyes were not quite in sync. So if you can imagine that can really mess you up. But gradually things got better. But people say, how am I today? It's over 11 years post accident. I still have some balance issues. I figure with respect to my balance and is about 85%. I think if anybody's walking behind me, they probably notice that I don't always walk in a straight line. I'm sort of just doing little side steps. And occasionally, for no reason, I just will step to one side like somebody's pushed me slightly. But you know what? You get used to that.
So Guinness. So let's can we put the camera on Guinness? So your dog's name is Guinness?
Dog's name is Guinness.
And how long you've had Guinness for now?
I've had Guinness since May 23rd, 2014.
And what kind of dog is he? Like the
he's a standard poodle.
Standard poodle? Okay. And you've had him ever since, and so he's sort of your best friend right now?
Well, he sort of became my unofficial service dog.
Okay.
I think for psychological reasons, and because I live by myself at home, and also having somebody to accompany me on these walks that I needed to do as part of my post-accident rehab.
Okay.
And
so he's beside you all the time, Guinness.
And you know, you bring a little puppy into your life, you don't have much time to feel sorry for yourself because of what happened and how your life has changed. And as you know, I was going through other stuff at the time with the federal government.
That's a separate issue.
You know, and so there was a bit of stress on me, and you know, as I often say, that it's it's probably never a good thing to have two lawyers in your life at the same time.
No, but you know, my
But,
dad
but you
always,
need them.
yeah, my dad always said you need a good doctor, you need a good accountant, you need a good lawyer. You know, you probably agree with that, eh?
Absolutely, but
Yeah.
but when you find yourself in a situation in life where you need two different lawyers
Yeah,
representing two different issues that you're concerned with, that's probably not a great thing,
yeah,
and that creates some stress.
yeah.
But you know, you get a demanding, intelligent 8-week-old puppy comes into your life, and you don't much have time for the first year, anyways. You don't have much time to think about anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let alone feeling sorry for yourself and how your life is changed forever, perhaps, and then there's certain things you'll never do again, and I still haven't been in my kayak. I put my sea kayak up on the storage rack in September of 2011, and it hasn't been touched since.
Yeah, but I mean that's the one thing I liked about you. I mean, you know, like what I like about is, you know, like, you know, we grow up in, you know, a little different generation now, but you know, people, you know, the biggest character of a person is if you fall down, you make sure you get up. And you weren't a whiner through the case. You understood your situation. You're a patient, and you know, like you always, you know, I think it's important for, you know, life is tough, and you know, no matter what people throw at you, you have to keep on going through your life. Correct?
Well, you know what is you never give in.
Yeah.
And you never give up.
Yeah.
You got to get. You sort of got to get angry and saying, you know what, this isn't going to do me, and this is. You know what, and this stuff happens.
Well, you know, like I always say, like bad things happen to good people.
Well, I mean, having an accident like this, like I had, is kind of a surreal experience because, you know, getting run down and the circumstances, a distracted driver and a crosswalk, but just the fact that I had the accident and I got run over by this car.
Yeah.
I mean, that's stuff that you read about in the newspapers, you see it on the news and TV.
Or you see it in movies.
It happens to somebody else.
Yeah, not you.
And I had never known anybody in my life, either close friends or family, that had ever been knocked down by a car. So it's not something you're ever even thinking about because it just doesn't happen to you. And then it does, and your life changes quickly.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up on 16th Avenue in Bowness, and people were starting to gather, and they were waiting for EMS to arrive. And my head was very sore because it was the back of my head that hit the pavement. And I went up to reach it to see if what was going on. It was, I guess, a natural reaction. And I had no movement from my neck down. I couldn't move any of my limbs. And that's sort of a feeling you never forget. And I thought to myself, is this how I'm going to check out of this life? Is this it?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the person who hit me was there rather hysterical, and this individual was apologizing to everybody. It was, I guess you could say, it was her fault. It was a woman because she was on her phone. She was admitting it.
Yeah.
And I thought, is this how I'm checking out of this life, by getting run down on a crosswalk by a distracted driver? I said, not a very noble way to die.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But you did retain counsel, and, you know, tell little people, what was the litigation process like for you? Was it a little frustrating, long? I mean, you know, it's good to be frank about, because a lot of people see TV, you know, lawyers, suits, and LA law, but what was the process like for you to go through?
Well, you were the second lawyer that I consulted with. The first one I had my doubts with. I got his name through the labor lawyer that was representing me in these other issues, but the first lawyer was kind of an older guy, and he didn't seem to be. Everything was done by fax and handwritten notes. He wasn't using computers or anything like this, and I don't think initially he thought I had much of a case. Anyways, I got referred to you by a friend of mine whose father-in-law, former Edmonton police officer, has done some investigating work for you. And you were completely different from the first guy I saw. I mean, took an interest in what had happened to me, and you took the time to explain to me what the process is.
Mm-hmm.
And the first guy never did that. He wanted to know kind of what happened, but you're the first one who actually explained how these things work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were honest enough with me at the time to caution me that these things don't get resolved overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long process.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in the end, I think we got everything resolved within 4 years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that long.
But we still had to go to mediation, remember?
Yes.
I mean, she did give it, the other lawyer I won't mention, she did give us a low ball offer, and it said, like, I think it was Christmas time. It says, here's a little present for your client. It said, I ran it by you and we said no. I recall them making a low ball offer almost immediately. Yeah,
like, take the check and go away.
Yeah.
And of course your advice was, well, no, that's what they always do, and we just reject that and move forward.
Yeah. But we had to go through the whole process, go to mediation, set it down for trial, and we got settled at mediation.
And all the assessments I had to go through.
Yeah.
You had sent me to and
specialists, because you need those reports to prove your injuries.
Yeah.
Like, people need to understand from your perspective as a former client of mine. Yeah, you're in the accident, you have the injuries, but we still have to prove our case. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was very comfortable in what you were telling me, and I was confident that you know what, just leave it in your hands,
mm-hmm.
and this is going to get resolved.
Yeah.
And knowing that I was going to have some patience, and it's not like you see on TV where, I guess all things considered, 4 years is not a bad time frame.
Well, the average personal injury case in Canada now, I saw a statistic about 2 weeks ago, is about 6 years.
Yeah.
So we beat it by 2 years. But you got to be patient. You got to go through the process. I mean, obviously, we prepared you for every step, from questioning to seeing your doctors to seeing these doctors for assessments and go to mediation.
Yeah, I think I used to get bugged, mad at you, and say, well, you got to go see this person, or you got to go see this person. And it was like, God, when is this ever going to end? It's like...
no, there's always an end at the end of the game.
And I think Defense Counsel also wanted to have an assessment done, I think.
Yeah.
And so I had to go to their assessment.
Yeah,
exactly. And then on top of that, it was all the therapy combined. And the vision therapy.
And doing the paperwork, and and then we prepared the case for you, got you ready for mediation, got the brief ready. But I mean, obviously we settled it. But this concussion thing, it's really like when I grew up, if you hit your head and you're playing rugby, just like shake it off and get back in the game. I mean, obviously, we've grown up since those days of concussions.
Well, back in the day, was man up. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
God, I'm old enough that when I started playing hockey, we didn't wear helmets.
Yeah.
I think I was 12 before helmets became mandatory, but
a concussion is a real injury. You've gone through?
Well, you know what? First of all, I hate the term concussion.
Yeah. How would you term it?
It's a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
But it sounds like by calling it a concussion, it suggests that it's not really that serious. It's a bump on the head. But, talking to my physiatrist at the brain injury clinic, I mean, a concussion is a traumatic brain injury, and things have changed.
Yeah.
And it irritates me to this day when I hear about injuries to NHL players or NFL players or football players that they so-and-so had a concussion and maybe they'll be out for a game. And I'm thinking, you know what, they want to drive the message home about the risks involved with playing hockey and playing football.
Mm-hmm.
Call it so-and-so got a hit on the head and he's got a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a tendency that they want to shy away from using that kind of terminology, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
I sympathize with these guys that they're out for a couple of games and they're hockey players or football players and they want to get back in. I went through the same denial for over 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
I took 3 or 4 weeks off initially after the accident, and I was anxious to get back to work. And I tried it, and things didn't really work out. Things got worse, and I took another 3 or 4 weeks off, and then I went back again. So I think what happens is you end up getting in denial and not realizing that, what happened to you, in all likelihood is going to be permanent.
Yeah.
And you better start dealing with it.
Yeah.
And your life is going to change.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of issues that you really don't want to think about initially, but it's how am I going to protect my own financial interests? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you go and see somebody like you. Mm-hmm. You want to say, well, I don't want to think about, hitting somebody up for money now. I just want to get better. But the reality is you have to, and you have to start as soon as the accident happens. You have to be thinking about that. Mm-hmm. Because that's part of the reality is you're ultimately going to lose income if you have to stop working early. Your contributions to your pension, the private business that I had, and I lost that income for a couple of years. Various additional expenses. I had hired somebody, I think, for 2 years mm-hmm. to mow my grass in the summer and to clear my driveway of snow in the winter months. Mm-hmm. Until I felt comfortable that I was up to doing that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But everything happens so quickly, and you're just not prepared for it. You're not quite sure how to deal with it, and luckily I had some great therapists. Mm-hmm. Got good treatment at the brain injury clinic. But the reality is you get a serious brain injury, sometimes it's not going to come back. Yeah. It's a little different, I think, than if you fracture your skull, which is a physical injury. They can fix that up. They can put a plate in, but if you sort of damage your CPU and mm-hmm. you end up with a couple of bad vectors or something, then mm-hmm. it's going to affect you, and you have to come to terms with that. Yeah. And mentally, I think it took me a while. It doesn't necessarily bother me anymore. I know what I can do and what I can't do. Yeah. And I've made changes in my life. I've adapted. I don't dwell on the fact that I don't ski. Will I try to get in my kayak next year for the first time in like 12 years? If I'm feeling up to it. Yeah. I'll give it a go, but if I can't, or if I do, yeah, and everything goes awry, that mm-hmm. I can't handle the balancing and stuff, you know what? Then I'll just sell the kayak and get rid of it. If I can't do it, why hold on to it? Yeah. But I haven't given up on that yet. Mm-hmm. People said about why don't you ski? Well, one is I got 2 knee replacements, and while I know people with knee replacements that have gone back in skiing, I can't risk going back and skiing and having a fall. I'm not terribly worried about my knees, mm-hmm. but I'd hate to fall and get a head injury. Yeah. Even after my knee replacements, and my surgeon, who was a former Olympic cyclist, he said, go back and ride all you want. He said, but I know you're a mountain biker, don't do any of the radical stuff. Yeah. And I said, well, I've also got a head injury, and I said, I couldn't imagine flying over the handlebars of my mountain bike and hitting my head even with a helmet on. Yeah. And that's something I just wouldn't risk.
So obviously the traumatic brain injury is a real injury. I mean, it's not like a broken arm where you see the person in the sling. You actually, it's in your brain. You've got to function. You've got to adapt to it. You've got to deal with the ongoing symptoms. Is that your message pretty much to people out there?
Broken arm, broken leg, child's
yeah.
play.
Yeah.
Cast it 6 weeks. The bone. My understanding is the bone comes back stronger than ever. Yeah. The impression I got from all the therapists I saw and talking to my physiatrist at the brain injury clinic is there's still so much they don't know about the brain, the inner workings. Yeah. The brain is the most complex organ we have in our body, and I just don't think they have the ability to actually, when it's been physically damaged. Yeah. I'm not sure it gets better. Mm-hmm. You have to make changes in your life, and mm-hmm. Sometimes they say, well, maybe the brain will rewire stuff, and mm-hmm. I don't know if there's any merit to that, or
Well, I always found it interesting, you can lose an arm and get a prosthetic arm. But if you have damage to your brain, you can't just open up your skull and put a prosthetic brain in there. You agree with that? You just have to make changes, deal with the ongoing symptoms, and try and every day is a challenge.
You know what is one is you have to do what the doctors and the therapists tell you to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it diligently.
Yeah.
And you have to come to terms with the fact there may be things in your life that you can't do and won't be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, I think, sometimes have difficulty accepting changes, those kinds of radical changes in their life.
Yeah.
But I always remember waking up, and I think one of the doctors explained to me the reason I couldn't feel anything was your spinal cord goes into shock momentarily as a means of protecting the rest of your body from moving parts and
mm-hmm.
to minimize that kind of damage. But
Mm-hmm.
For 30 seconds or so, when I woke up and I couldn't move anything,
Yeah.
You don't forget an experience like that, and given how things could have turned out, I'm pretty lucky that I got through it and I survived.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're glad you're still here and you went through the process and you're patient with my office. But I think the most important thing is people have to understand, a traumatic brain injury, even though if you can't see it or feel it, it's a real injury, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think many people would argue that's the worst injury of all.
Yeah, it's a silent injury that you can't see at all.
In this day and age, I think I told you the story. The 6 months after I had my accident, my next door neighbor, coming home down Sarcee Trail after work in his little Ford Ranger pickup truck, a big dump truck going in the opposite direction lost control, went over the center line median and crushed him in his truck.
Ooh.
And I remember watching, I was sitting in the fire hall up in Banff one night watching it on the news.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw pictures and I said, geez, because most of the work that the guys do with the fire departments are responding to motor vehicle accidents, and they're there to they say is extract the car from the person.
Yeah. And
I was looking at this on it was Global News, and I thought, God, how does anybody get out of that alive?
Yeah.
Well, the next day I got a call. I was in my office at the Banff Fire Hall. I got a call from his wife, and he said, well, that was Chad.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh my God. I said, how is he? He broke just about everything on his body except that he had no head injury.
Yeah.
I remember visiting him, and he was when he got out of hospital, was at an extended care center. He just had his last knee surgery as part of the recovery about last winter.
Mm-hmm.
Broken arm, broken knee, broken leg. He had, one of these, the kind of the cast they put on the outside of your leg with the pins and the bars. And
Oh yeah.
so his body, it took him several years. Well, I guess up until last year when he had his final knee surgery, but no brain injury, and that made a difference. The doctors, everything, all the injuries that he sustained were physical.
Yeah.
And today's surgeons have the ability to they can mend you.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just something that's broken, they'll go in and fix it and mend you, and it could be a lengthy rehab process. But when it's all said and done, is your broken arm, your broken leg, your foot, it's all back to normal, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't do that with the brain.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, I've been extra cautious about going in crosswalks anymore.
Yeah. No, we're all happy you're here and you're still, surviving and you're still living your life, and, you've adapted to your change, and you've got Guinness part of your life, your dog. There's always this wave of, insurance companies, we got to shut down these injury cases, and, people can't get a recourse to go to court and get justice and get compensation. You've been through the process. You've had the brain injury. You've been through the process of 4 years of litigation. What do you think of potentially these insurance companies getting their way and closing the court as an access to justice for victims like you with brain injuries or people with broken bones from car accidents that they didn't chose to be in? What's your view of that?
That kind of thing would be, pardon the pun, would be a crime if they did away with the ability for somebody to pursue civil litigation in a case like this.
Yeah.
It was. I got a great settlement. It enabled me to help me financially and pay off the balance of my house, and things that I would have had difficulty doing, I guess, given the fact that I was not able to work anymore.
Yeah.
I know the right now they don't give you too much for pain and suffering anymore.
Yeah. It is said now Canada with the Supreme Court of Canada that you get pain and suffering, but they're talking about shutting down the whole system. Like, unfortunately, in BC in May 2021, they changed the law. Like, if you're hitting a crosswalk in Kelowna, you get a brain injury, you can't have. There's no recourse at all. They have no fault insurance. So, in Alberta, we still have an access to justice, and you don't think people that are not at fault for an accident and then now are injured, they still should have that access to justice through the court system.
So are there no accident legal firms in BC anymore? Are they actually put out of business? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. 2021, May 2021.
How does the province justify that? Which
saving money for insurance companies and people's premiums and all that stuff.
So what does the victim do?
There's no recourse regarding an injury case, but they can still get the Part 7 benefits to pay for some treatment and some rehab and disability, but they don't get a settlement against the party who's at fault for the accident.
But can they claim from loss of future income and
not through the legal system like you did, like where you actually sue the party who's at fault for the accident and hold them accountable? What do you think of that?
I quite honestly, it's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah. It's been in place since May of 2021.
I'd be appalled.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'll never live in BC.
There's a lot of reasons why I won't live in There's a lot of reasons why I won't live in BC, but that's probably one of them too. I don't agree with their government out there and their, the policies, but, at the end of the day, you've been through the process. If you're in an accident like this, wouldn't you want to have a recourse and hold the person accountable for causing that accident?
Absolutely. I've explained to friends since I've gone through this experience of mine that if you're involved in an accident, I said, once you get your needed medical attention, the next thing you got to do is you got to find yourself a good accident lawyer.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that was going on in BC. Do the residents of BC know what's happening?
Oh yeah, they know. Well, you got the same thing in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec. When someone causes an accident, you can't hold that party accountable for paying you for your pain and suffering, loss of income. There's no recourse in the court system anymore.
So if you're no longer to continue working,
I guess you're.
So you just go on long-term disability or CPP
you're dependent
disability?
on the system and whatever your own auto insurance can pay for rehab and stuff like that. Yeah. So obviously you would agree. You've been through this. You've been a victim of someone's negligence. Obviously there's a person who's driving the car the day you got hit. They chose to be on their phone, correct?
Absolutely.
They chose to talk to that person, correct?
Yes.
They chose not to be attentive, correct?
Absolutely.
And there's studies out there in America and Canada where if you're on your phone or you're texting, that's just as bad as, or even worse than being drunk behind the wheel of a car. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, I was. I'm still in the process of setting up a nonprofit organization, and I almost got the trademark approved. We've just got one more review, and I had hoped to get this underway prior to COVID. And I had done a lot of research, and based on the stats, and I had talked to police organizations across the country. I had a lengthy chat with the Solicitor General and PEI about this and drunk driving versus distracted driving, and everything sort of got put on hold with COVID. The trademark application was put on hold for 3 years, I guess, or longer. But the stats that I gathered during that time indicated that there are more fatalities and serious injuries as a result of distracted driving than impaired driving.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's face it, if you're distracted behind the wheel of a car, you're impaired.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
first of all, you shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car if you're on your phone. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you chose to get in your car, like we all have cell phones. Like I got an iPhone 14, but put your phone away when you're driving. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and you've probably noticed this too when you come to an intersection, you got a red light, and there's a car in front of you. When the light turns green and the car's not moving, you know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're texting.
They're texting and checking their emails, and it's an epidemic out there.
Yeah.
And one of the plans I have, as soon as we get the trademark finalized, is I'm going to try to get one of the local MPs here to introduce a private member's bill in the House to change or amend the criminal code to include the same provisions, the same penalties for distracted driving as we presently have for impaired driving.
Yeah.
If the person that knocked me down had failed a breathalyzer and had been impaired, she could have ended up in jail.
Well, yeah, she would have been charged on the Criminal Code of Canada.
And could have ended up in jail.
Yeah. Or a suspended sentence with a big fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead, because apparently she admitted to the police officer that responded, she paid a $600 fine for failing to yield.
Yeah.
So we're not, things like distracted driving, I have a big issue with it, and we're not taking it seriously in this country. And I don't think we will until it becomes an infraction in the criminal code.
Yeah.
I think, and we need to get that change, we need to promulgate that, and people have to realize we have to scare the crap out of people, saying, you know what, if you're involved in an accident and there's any proof that you were on your phone when it happened, you could possibly lose your license, you could possibly go to jail. And I think that had a big impact on getting people to stop drinking and driving.
Yeah,
but
people still drink and drive all the time. Never.
But I know more and more people.
Yeah.
That haven't done that for 20 years, and I know
because they know the implications of drinking and driving.
And as for the younger members of my family, especially growing up in Ontario with the graduated driver's licenses, since they're all in their 30s and 40s now, but from the time they started driving, as they know that you didn't drink and drive. So we've got a new generation that understands that, but there's also this new younger generation that would never think about drinking and driving. It's probably on their smartphone half the time while they're driving. And I think there's politicians that are doing it. It's so addictive. And from what I've read, that a psychological addiction is much more difficult to resolve than a physical addiction, like an addiction to alcohol.
Well, I think the problem, this generation now, we're all attached by the hip to our phone some way. Imagine, you can't find your phone. You go in a panic attack. Where's my comfort blanket? I'm cut from the rest of the world. The world's not going to end if you don't have your phone.
Well, you know what it's like. You got your phone in your pocket, or it's sitting on the seat in your driver's, and the alert goes off, the little beep.
Well,
people are getting conditioned. You gotta check it immediately.
Or you're bored and you just look at your phone to see if anyone's sent you an email. Wouldn't you agree with that? Or check the score. I mean, there's so many apps now. Score's got an app. You get is the Reds like the Giants beating the Cowboys in a football game? I got to know the score right away. That's the problem with the phones. It's not only the phone. And it's the email, it's the apps attached to it.
People want
instant information.
Instant access to all information instantly. And since we've all got, many of us have our phones programmed so we get the alerts from Facebook or text messages or emails, that little beep goes off.
Well, you got a phone, right?
Yes.
So if I hid your phone on you for a week, would you feel kind of panicky? Like, what the hell's going on? Am I cut off from the world?
You know what? Not really.
No?
I often, when I take Guinness to the dog park, I'm there twice a day. I often get to the dog park, and I've been keeping track of my mileage. I have a little app that keeps track of my GPS app that keeps track of my mileage, and I often leave the phone at home. I just forget it. I get to the dog park and I reach in my pocket to activate the app, and I don't have it. And it's like, well, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
I'm not working. I'm not in business. I quite honestly, I'm not that important. I don't think.
But it's also the new comfort blanket that we have in our life. Wouldn't you agree with us? The phone.
Well, it's invaded our lives.
Yeah.
And the issue, the reason that we need to address this, I think, through changing the criminal code is, I've got some teacher friends and kids from grade 3 onwards, grade 4, are coming to class with their smartphones.
Yeah.
So just think, by the time they turn 16 and get their driver's license, if they've had a smartphone in their hands since they were 9 or 10 years old, just think how they're addicted they're going to be by the time they're old enough to get a drive.
They can't put that phone away when they're behind the wheel of a car. Wouldn't you agree with that?
They never will. It's unless we have a deterrent in place.
Yeah.
Like severe punishment, like we do for impaired driving, to scare the living crap out of these people, and implement it, enforce it, get some convictions, get some good social media coverage, and maybe it'll dawn on people saying, you know what, this is just like drinking and driving. I've got to put the phone down.
Yeah.
You know, I've often, having been with the fire service with Banff and Olds, I'm thinking that, you know what, unless you're involved with police, fire, EMS, we don't need anybody. We don't have to answer our phones immediately.
No.
None of us are that. I don't care whether you're a judge or a lawyer.
Unless you're a heart surgeon on call on the weekend.
And the heart has just arrived at the airport, and you're gonna But other than that, none of us are that important. And you know what? And if it is an important call, no matter where you are, you always have an opportunity to pull over to the side of the road.
Yeah, or wait till you get home and then answer the phone call. Yeah. So obviously, you've been through the system. You've unfortunately been hit by someone who was, on their phone. You suffered the injury. You've gone through the court process. You agree that there should be access to justice for people that are injured like you, to keep people accountable of causing you injuries and changing.
Absolutely, and I've been stunned what you've told me tonight that doesn't exist anymore in BC or in Saskatchewan, and.
But obviously,
and you were saying in Ontario also?
No, in Quebec.
In Quebec.
Yeah, Manitoba.
Wow, I can't believe that they've allowed that to happen.
Well, obviously, maybe you should talk to your MLA in Alberta and get other people to everyone out there should call their MLA to make sure we don't have this kind of no fault system come to Alberta where we still want to hold people accountable. If you make a mistake, shouldn't you be held accountable for your faults?
Well, I'm hoping with the because we have a tradition of voting most of the time, I guess, conservative here, that's not something in our foreseeable future. But we did go through a 4-year period with NDP, and I wonder if they were ever considering it at the time.
No, they didn't do. They made some changes to the law, but nothing's extreme where you're cutting off the court system to access for justice, like accident victims like you.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's always recourse for people to call their MLAs. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I think people need to, if they don't like something, they need to be vocal about it and take some action. And a lot of people don't because they think it's just too much work. But I'm adamant about pursuing this, getting a private members bill introduced, and I'll start it off with an online petition.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to approach our MP up in Hawkwood, Michelle Rempel. She seems to be the type that might embrace this. And you know what? If somebody introduced it in House and Common, I would dare any of the parties to turn it down.
Yeah.
Not to recognize that this is a serious issue and it has to be resolved. And quite frankly, it could be resolved very easily.
Yeah.
They could probably take the same wording that we have in the criminal code for impaired driving and just alter it. To include distracted driving, and quick and simple, and then get the message out. But for the different police associations and that I've spoken to across the country 3 years ago when I was investigating this, they're all in favor of something like this.
Yeah.
It's getting out of control, and nothing is changing.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing it, and I'm just wondering sometimes if that's why we've got teachers and lawyers and professors and everybody is doing it. They can't put these damn phones down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an addiction.
And as bad as it may have been when this lady hit me 12 years ago, I got to believe it's worse now.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. You were saying you just bought you've got an Apple 14. As the new one just came out, I think.
Yeah, the 15, the titanium.
Yeah. The 14 came out last year?
No, 14. Yeah, now they have the 15 titanium.
Yeah, I got a 14 too.
Yeah,
I bought mine last year.
Yeah,
but, it's... Apple makes these announcements every year. They're releasing a new phone, and there are young people that can't wait to trade their 2-year-old iPhone and get a new one.
Or even the 6-month-old iPhone.
Yeah, they got to have the latest.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's the worst addiction that's ever happened to.
Yeah, worse than arcades playing pinball when we were growing up, eh?
You can't take a pinball machine in the car
Put it in
while
your
you're
car.
driving.
Yeah,
but
you definitely can take a phone anywhere.
You know what? Before I had the accident, I got a hands-free device in my truck, and I was driving down McLeod Trail. And I came down 9th Avenue. I was heading down to Willow Park Village. My manager of fire protection engineering in Vancouver for the federal government was retiring. So I said, well, I think I know what we can get him. He likes to fish. I said, I've got a great fly fishing shop down in Willow Park. We'll get him a nice fly rod.
Yeah.
So I was heading down on a Saturday, and I came along 9th Avenue, and I turned on to McLeod. And my phone rang, and it was the fire chief up in Olds, and we were discussing something, and I can't recall the particulars. Anyways, I remember I got down to the intersection where I had to turn left to go into Willow Park Village, and I said, Lauren, I got to go now. I said, I'm at the shopping center. Even though it was hands-free, because I have no recollection of the trip down McLeod Trail and all the intersections and all the lights that I had to stop for or go through. Because even though I was hands-free, I wasn't focused on the driving. I was focused on the conversation I was having with the fire chief in Olds.
Yeah.
That scared the crap out of me so much that when I got home, I took the hands-free device and I threw it in the garbage. Yeah. And I basically, as you know, the iPhone connects with my car automatically.
Oh yeah.
Anybody calls me, and it's rarely, I never answer.
Yeah. No, you shouldn't. And my dad had a saying growing up. He always told me, Steve, if you're doing something, focusing on it. If you're driving your car, just focus on that. If you're watching the football game, just focus on that. But we have this idea that we can multitask, but you wouldn't agree with that at all.
No, I think we forget how much attention we need just to drive a motor vehicle.
Yeah, yeah. Or even go out for dinner. Like, you see families that are going out for dinner at a nice, they'll go out for Earl's and spend a couple $100 on dinner, and they're all on their phone.
Nobody's sitting there and talking to one another.
Yeah.
They're all checking their emails.
But like my dad used to say, if you're out for dinner, go enjoy your dinner, focus on the dinner, focus on the company, put your phone away, and just, do one thing at one time. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I wouldn't tolerate it if I was with family.
Yeah, yeah.
If anybody brought out their smartphone while we were having dinner, or even if we're having a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner and people are sitting at the table with their smartphone, I would just be infuriated.
Yeah.
But it's a huge addiction. I don't know what the answer is, but as a society, we're tolerating it because if you look at the distracted driving laws in all the provinces right now. Yeah. It's a slap on the wrist. You lose a few points, and they'll fine you a couple $100.
Yeah.
And talking to I think it was the Solicitor General, Minister of Justice down in PEI, I had a good conversation with her. We talked about using charging somebody with criminal negligence if they're involved. And she said, well, that's always an option. Yeah. I said, well, you're in tune with what's going on across the country. I said, have you ever heard of anybody being charged with criminal negligence because they were involved in an accident because they were on their smartphone? And she said no. Yeah. So if somebody wants to argue that could be a provision that a prosecutor could use under the criminal code, it hasn't been used, at least up to 3 years ago. Yeah. What we need is something very specific that says if you're involved in an accident, you cause grievous bodily harm to somebody and or death because you were distracted. These are the penalties, and should be exactly the same as it is for impaired driving.
Yeah. Okay.
So stuff like that keeps me going.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time to come down here on a Wednesday night, especially when we just got 25 centimeters of snow here in Calgary, and sharing your experience.
Well, the roads are good. If there was 25 centimeters, you wouldn't have seen me here tonight.
Yeah, I know, but that was like Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing the unfortunate journey you had with your accident. Sharing your ideas about living with a concussion, and I got to give credence to you just to keep on fighting. I mean, obviously, if you fall down, you got to keep getting up and just plugging away with your life, and also your ideas about distracting driving. Hopefully, one day this will be taken more seriously in avoiding accidents like you were involved in.
Well, once my petition is up and ready, I'll be asking for you to sign it. And
just give me a call anytime or email me, okay?
Well, and thank you for all the work you did for me post accident.
Okay.
My life is immeasurably better because of the settlement we got and all the work you did. But
okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I couldn't done it without the whole team behind you at Grover Law Firm, too, the associate lawyers, the staff, and even everyone, and you cooperating with us. You're a great client.
Well, there's a need for you guys in this particular type of legal profession.
Okay.
And I hate to see anything change through legislation that would do away with that. I'm still shocked and stunned by what you've told me has gone on in BC.
Yeah,
I had no idea that was going on.
Well, hopefully it'll never happen here in Alberta. But if something comes up in the horizon, I guess people can talk to their MLAs and express their ideology and opinion about that. Wouldn't you be fair?
Well, and it's a good ways to bring, if that was ever being considered, we've got social media now to bring it to the attention of people and inform them and let them know exactly what that means and how they could be impacted if they are involved in an accident.
And they could hear the story of your story and how.
Hey, I'll be out there screaming bloody murder if that ever happens, because I don't know where I'd be without you guys.
Okay, well, thank you and appreciate it, and cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for coming by, and hopefully you have a happy Halloween and give a lot of candy away for those little trick-or-treaters.
No, my house is dark and sealed up, so nobody comes to my door.
Okay, well, hopefully you have a good Christmas then, okay? All right?
Same to you and the rest of your colleagues here at Grover Law.
And hopefully Guinness is okay, and hopefully he has a good Christmas too, okay?
Yeah, Guinness is excited to be here. He's still crashed on the floor.
All right, well, thank you, and thank everyone for tuning in for this episode, and till next time, see you again on the Bulldog Brewhouse Podcast, and stay safe and keep warm for now. Thank you. Cheers.